As the House of Commons returns this week, the Conservatives are offering to work with the minority Liberals in some key areas like affordability and crime. In an open letter to the Prime Minister this weekend, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says he's ready to turn rhetoric into reality by fast-tracking policies you have long delayed. Government House Leader Steven MacKinnon responded.
We will take him at his word and accept his outreached hand to work together at this very challenging time in our nation's history. He's going to have to apply himself to this, to work constructively on legislation and not obstruct, to move ahead with legislation in the House and in committees, including quickly adopt a bill to provide immediate grocery relief to Canadians.
Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer joins me now to talk more about all of this. Hello, Mr. Scheer.
Good evening.
Some common ground here, some agreement on some crime legislation, perhaps on these affordability measures. Is this 2026 turning the page with the Conservatives and the Liberals?
Well, you know, our message has been consistent, where Liberals have stolen Conservative ideas or at least paid lip service to them, or at least if they're not making things worse, we've said that we would help facilitate passage of that legislation. I point out on the crime bill, Conservatives' preference is to have real bail reform, where the rights of law-abiding Canadians come before the rights of dangerous and repeat offenders. The Liberal solution on bail is weak and watered down, but it at least does no further harm. So if Mark Carney says this is the fix, we've said, well, let's pass it. In the fall, we tried to get the Justice Committee to deal with C-14 19 times. Well, the 20th time was the charm, because today the Liberals finally agreed to do that. So I believe that just because a Liberal cabinet minister says it doesn't make it true, they need to stop obstructing their own legislation, and Conservatives have charted a path for at least some areas where there is some common ground.
Okay, there is a lot of ground here, so let's break it down, if not piece by piece, at least some of the pieces to help people understand where you and the government do see some common ground. These affordability measures that were announced today, we had the Finance Minister on the show earlier. That is something that Conservatives are willing to get behind? You can give that an official thumbs up, or...
Yeah, I will answer your question, but if you'll allow me to just frame it a little bit. This is the same exact thing. What the Liberals announced today was a recycled Trudeau-era policy. It didn't work when Justin Trudeau tried it. We don't believe it's going to be the fix for today either, but we're not going to block it. We're going to allow it to pass. So we are the party of tax relief. We are the party of leaving more money in the pockets of Canadians across the board. We think that giving Canadians some of their own money back for a temporary period of time, while the government is raising the industrial carbon tax, while it's raising the fuel standards tax that adds up to 17 cents a litre when it's fully implemented, we believe those would have been better things to eliminate, scrap those Liberal hidden taxes on food. We also believe that getting the budget back to some kind of balance is much more effective at tackling inflation than this measure that Trudeau tried and failed with. So we're not going to block it, but we have a better course of action that we're going to be talking to Canadians about in the next few days ahead.
Is this really, I want to go back to that first question of whether or not this is really cooperation, Mr. Scheer. Of course, I think we all understand parliamentary system, the importance of the loyal opposition. Your role is to oppose, but there is a lot of asterisks around this collaboration as you've just described it. Is this really a world where we're going to see you working with the government more? Because you sound wildly unimpressed by all of this.
Well, we just know what it would take to actually solve these problems. You know, it was Liberals that were fighting tooth and nail to keep the carbon tax right up until they dumped the former leader and had a massive pivot before the last election. So we know that Conservative policies are what will address and fix the problems facing Canadians. To the degree that Liberals get behind that, I guess we'll see what actually comes out. But I should also point out that even where we've signaled our cooperation, the Liberals have a habit of putting in measures. For example, in their budget implementation bill, they put in a measure that allows cabinet ministers to basically circumvent, break, ignore all kinds of legislation that's aimed at protecting Canadians with transparency measures and accountability measures. So we will never give them a blank check before we see what's actually in the legislation.
Well, so you've seen the legislation now, and they were goading you in question period today. They want to know whether or not you're prepared to pass that Budget Implementation Act. You've just outlined your concerns about it. What's the status of play there? Is there room to find common ground here, or no?
What we said is if their legislation, and once we have a chance to go through it with a fine-tooth comb and really do the analysis that Canadians expect of us. We are the loyal opposition. It is our job to act as the watchdogs for taxpayers, for Canadians who have to live under liberal laws and liberal taxation measures. If, in fact, it contains only what they announced today, then we will allow it to pass.
Okay, but I'm asking, I do want to ask about the justice legislation as well, right? So there were two pieces of legislation here, just for folks at home. Your party has some significant concerns about the combating hate, C9 legislation. It seems now that C14, this other piece of legislation, bail reform, which, yes, I noted you expressed your displeasure with earlier in the interview, that is moving now. I'd like you to help us understand, though, just factually here, have you and the Liberals reached an agreement? Did the Liberals tell you they're not moving forward on C9? How did we get to a place where C14 is moving?
Mm-hmm. Well, very simply, over the course of the last few weeks of the fall session, at committee, our members tried to park C9, the religious censorship bill, and say, look, let's not use this. Let's not have the Liberals use this as a way to block what they say will fix the bail system. They refused all throughout the fall. Today, we were able to reach an agreement where the government has agreed to pause, to park C9, and we have agreed in return to deal with C14.
For how long? For how long have they agreed to park C9?
Well, I believe what the agreement was that we'll have a set number of meetings on C14. You can fact check me on this, but I think the motion that was passed today was for 3 meetings for the Justice Committee to meet on C14, to go through hear from witnesses, to hear from experts that will highlight aspects of the bill that are need improvement. Then we'll have an opportunity to make amendments if those are justified. So we've taken them that was our good faith offer, that if they agreed to park C9, something that we don't support because we believe in religious freedom, then
the government would say they believe in religious freedom too, Mr. Scheer. There's a distinct difference of opinion about this legislation. Some people agreeing with your party that there are concerns about freedom of expression, but also groups like B'nai B'rith who say the laws are needed to protect community members, right? So I just want that debate to be clear to the audience.
Well, it's Liberals who have themselves said that there are aspects of religious texts that they believe are criminal. We want to focus on bail. We say, look, it's Liberals that caused the bail crisis in this country by changing the law to basically force judges to consider bail at the first as the priority, and to make things like public safety, the probability of an offender reoffending. Those were all given, moved down the list of priorities, and the criminal's right for bail was moved right to the top. That was a Liberal decision. We want that changed. What they brought to Parliament is weak and watered down, but at least does no further harm. So
they are arguing it's responding to the court decision. I do want to get another issue in here, though, because we spent a lot of time on bail. That letter that your leader sent to the Prime Minister over the course of the weekend, you offered to help on increasing trade, various trade issues, even offering bipartisan delegations, perhaps to the United States. Any uptake on that?
Well, we were able to get the agreement on bail reform today. We haven't got a firm response on those other aspects. I should point out that the only bills before Parliament on trade right now are deals that Justin Trudeau signed. Mark Carney hasn't brought anything to Parliament that he himself has initiated or signed. So there's one bill on allowing the United Kingdom to, they call it acceding, entering the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. There's also one on the Trudeau signed deal on Indonesia that is before Parliament. Those are 2 examples of the things that we've offered. So we'll see if they take us up on it.
You know, we're not going to talk about trade and not wrap up this conversation by talking about what's happening south of the border. The Prime Minister said today that perhaps some of Donald Trump's reaction to his speech was actually about the fact that the CUSMA review is coming up, basically suggesting Trump's trying to maybe push Canada around a little bit to try to get his way in this review. I wonder if you share that assessment, that is what is happening with all of these threats and turmoil.
Well, Mark Carney hasn't been very open and transparent about about the nature of his conversations. So it's hard for us in opposition to assess that. What I can assess is what Mark Carney himself said during the election campaign. Said he was the guy you hire in a crisis. He had the magic wand that he could fix these tariffs.
He never said. I mean, he did not say he had a magic wand. Sir.
No, he said he was the guy you hire in a crisis. He was the man with the plan. He basically told Canadians that elect him and he would resolve these tariffs. That was the central theme of his campaign. And he promised a deal on tariffs by the end of July. There's no deal. He unilaterally dropped retaliatory tariffs. Didn't get anything returned. He talks about middle powers not currying favor with large powers around the world. Right after he came back from China and gave certain and permanent concessions to China and got very uncertain and temporary deals on Canadian canola back. So he has a terrible record on handling these tariff issues, not just with the United States, but with many of Canada's trading partners. Okay,
we are going to leave the conversation there. If you do get that bipartisan delegation, sounds like it's going to be a heck of a thing. But thank you very much for your time today, Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer. The House of Commons is back today, and after a tumultuous fall sitting that only passed 4 bills, the Conservatives are saying they will work with the Liberals for faster results. On Saturday, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wrote this letter to the Prime Minister, offering his help to turn rhetoric into reality, that being Liberal rhetoric, according to Pierre Poilievre, by fast-tracking policies you have long delayed on affordability and crime. And today, House Leader Andrew Scheer said his party won't stand in the way of the Liberals' top-up to the GST rebate.
Where there is Liberal legislation that at least does no further harm, we are allowing those bills to proceed. So, as my leader said on the weekend, we are calling on the government to work cooperatively, to respect the mandate that the Canadian people gave them in the last election, and work with us on things that will provide tax relief, that will address the Liberal-caused affordability crisis.
Government House Leader Steven MacKinnon joins me now to talk more about this. Hello.
Good evening, Catherine.
Today, you quoted Pierre Poilievre on pipelines and other issues as well, repeatedly telling him to get out of the way of your government's priorities. I think you're being a little cheeky there, Steven MacKinnon. You are the government. It's your minority mandate. Why isn't the onus on you to find cooperation on a way forward?
Well, the fact is, Catherine, this Parliament can work. At its best, it does work. It works mostly when Mr. Poilievre stops telling his MPs to just simply obstruct, speak eternally in debate in the House of Commons, obstruct committees, tie them up with all sorts of little cutesy speeches and whatnot. The fact is, what you're seeing from Mr. Poilievre is I think he's hearing from Canadians and those Conservative ridings that they largely approve of the Prime Minister's strategy, largely approve of the Carney plan to create jobs, to attract $1 trillion with a T investment into this country for affordability, on crime. So we have a suite of measures before Parliament, some of which the Conservatives have indicated they're now prepared to support. And I think Canadians have made themselves known to Mr. Poilievre and others, and we hope that continues.
Well, I do wonder about the spirit of all of this as you're sort of like poking him a little bit on the get out of your way. We spoke to Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer earlier in the show. I would not say he reflected what you just said about the majority of Conservatives, in your view, liking what this Prime Minister has to offer. He pointed to what he sees as a series of failings and also questioned the motivation behind some of these pieces of legislation. So, is this really a brave new era? Do you think things are going to move a lot faster in the next few months?
Well, day one, we got our bail bill. We got some progress on moving that through Parliament. So Canadians hopefully will see important reforms to the bail system. We have other crime legislation that we're hoping similarly the Conservatives will change their tune on, whether it's to protect women from domestic violence, whether it's to protect children from child pornography, whether it's to protect business people and others from extortion demands. All of this is before Parliament. Conservatives used to say that they're for all of this. Their constituents tell us to this day that they're for all of this, and hopefully that we can continue to make progress on all of these fronts, Catherine. But the big thing, there is no serious offer of support that does not include the Budget Implementation Act. That's why I asked Mr. Poilievre very directly in the House of Commons today, could he give us a date? Because this is all in his control. Mr. Carney's plan, his budget plan, his prosperity plan for the country is before Parliament. Now, Mr. Poilievre, what he needs to do is give us a date that we can vote on this. They can vote however they want, but that we can vote on this in the House of Commons and move forward on Mr. Carney's plan to create opportunities and prosperity in Canada.
You'll be delighted to hear, Steven MacKinnon, that we asked Andrew Scheer about this and the timeline for it, and he says he wants to. He says he wants to study the legislation more carefully.
There you go.
And he pointed to, but this is what I want to ask you about. He pointed to, in part, these exemptions, right, that give ministers extraordinary powers, right? You can suspend any piece of legislation with the exception of the criminal code. Why is that okay? Why is that something your government needs? That seems like an extraordinary amount of power.
Well, let ministers speak to that. Of course, it's a Budget Implementation Act. It covers many things, but we're all ears. If he's making suggestions, picking out one or two items that they'd like to talk about, we know we're in a minority parliament. We know that compromises have to be made. We know that we need to dialogue with the opposition.
Because that's the touchy subject.
We do that all the time, Catherine. Open our doors, ask Conservatives to come in, and not very often do they take us up on our offer. But we're absolutely all ears on the Budget Implementation Act. And if Mr.
I think you've been opening your doors and asking them to join your party, in fact.
If Mr. Scheer wants to come into the office, he knows where it is. Make a suggestion, and I hope he brings with him, a calendar invite that he can share with me, where we can do third reading and get this very, very important, pivotal piece of legislation in our country's history off to the Senate. Canadians are asking for that. Canadians are looking for the results that we've been discussing, that Mr. Carney's been discussing since the beginning of his leadership campaign about a year ago. Mr. Carney's been very, very clear and very consistent with the kinds of things that he's proposing to Canadians. We secured a mandate for those things at the end of April last year. We're looking to put them into play. Conservatives now need to get out of the way.
So I note that in this new era of collaboration, you're both accusing each other of obstruction. But I want to talk about some of these pieces of legislation and some of the other things in front of us, specifically on the legislation combating hate, which the Conservatives have very loudly voiced concerns about. They say that it will amount to religious censorship. You've agreed to put it aside to get this other piece of legislation around bail reform moving. Is C9 just on ice now, the combating hate legislation? You're moving ahead with it, it's just paused for a moment?
In fact, very positive. We have a date certain where we'll be taking that matter up in committee. Conservatives used to be asking Parliament, I'm sure you can look up the Hansard, the transcripts like I can, Catherine. They used to ask for mosques, churches, synagogues to be protected.
They still want that, sir. They just think the means that you're going about it is not going to achieve those ends.
This is there they go again. I mean, the fact is this government has responded vigorously with legislation to respond to concerns from Canadians. I know that Canadians living in conservative ridings are making it known to their MPs that they like the Carney approach, that they like the fact that we keep our word, that we keep our promises, that we put things before Parliament like we said we would, and we're hoping that this represents a bit of a breaking of a logjam in Parliament.
You said today there is a majority in the House that wants to pass Mark Carney's agenda. You haven't had enough floor crossers to have that majority, so where's this majority coming from, Steven MacKinnon?
Well, we are a minority government, and it'll have to come from somewhere.
But you say there is a majority. Who else is in the majority?
Well, look, if I base myself only on the comments that I receive in private or the nice notes or the praise that Mr. Carney gets for various things from all sides of the House, I'm pretty confident that there's a majority of members of Parliament who, on any given matter, are prepared to approve the elements of Mr. Carney's plan for Canada, and I know that we'll be successively putting those things to a vote, and we're obviously very, very hopeful that they continue to receive the approval of the Parliament of Canada. We are in serious times, Catherine. We are in a serious time where the country faces external threats, where we have big tectonic plates in the world that are moving, where the Prime Minister has told the world in Davos where he thinks middle powers like Canada should situate themselves, where we go to find alliances, where we go to find trade partners. This is a plan that generally has been lauded by Canadians from all walks of life. And I know that as a general rule, as a general proposition, the members in this place behind me are generally supportive of Mr. Carney's plan.
Okay. I suppose we will find out as you continue to try to move legislation forward. You talked about the Davos speech there, and I want to talk for a moment about the other big speech that Mark Carney gave last week in Quebec City. He defended his Plains of Abraham comments today. They've been very controversial in Quebec for people who haven't perhaps been following that discussion. He seemed to suggest that was, a moment where the battle, essentially it was a moment of finding a road forward on partnership, right? And you see the PQ leader saying this is a complete misunderstanding, it's lying about history. Do you think Mark Carney's comments on the Plains of Abraham did some damage? I think that separatists like to thump their chests. I think Quebecers, including the ones that I represent, I very proudly represent a Quebec riding, 90% Francophone riding, and people understood very clearly what Mr. Carney was saying, which is that we have built together one of the best countries in the world. Sure, we have our challenges. Sure, we have our disagreements from time to time. Sure, we have to make compromises. But on the whole, we have built the best country in the world, and we've done that together. Our futures lie in creating ever closer relationships between Francophones and Anglophones in this country. That was the point of the speech. Right, but would you repeat his words? Because it's the words that are being scrutinized. Would you say it was a moment for partnership, the Plains of Abraham? What I would say is that Canada has a history, a very good history, of reaching accommodation so that people, whether they're Francophone or Anglophone, or frankly of any other ethno-cultural background, or Indigenous peoples for that matter, have created a magnificent place that we're going to defend with all the energy and vigor that we have. And the separatists, well, they're going to thump their chests from time to time, but Quebecers will respond and always assert their very, very proud allegiance and pride in being Canadian. In closing, I'd like to actually pick up on that point and ask you, I mean, there is, as we know, the prospect that we could be staring down another Quebec referendum. What is it you would like to see your government and the Prime Minister do in the coming months to best make the case for Quebec remaining a part of Canada? Quebecers want what Canadians from every part of the country want. They want measures to improve affordability, to make life more affordable. They want our country protected against external threats on trade, on other issues. They want crime in their streets and safe communities to be dealt with. This is precisely the agenda that Quebecers are asking us to implement. It happens to be the same agenda that, whether you're from Mississauga or Red Deer or Vancouver or St. John's, Newfoundland, also the agenda that people are asking us to put forward. And I think this is why you're finding, Catherine, that Mr. Carney's plan has received such wide approval from all walks of life in Canada, Quebec, outside Quebec, and we're going to continue to work on that. The best way to unify the country is to continue to work on the issues that preoccupy Canadians in their daily lives. We are going to have to leave the conversation there, but thank you very much for your time on this busy day, Government House Leader Steven MacKinnon. Thank you, Catherine.